I compare our family to families that have all typical children, and our life is harder. But I compare our life to parents that have nonverbal children, and our life is a cakewalk.
The moms, dads, listen to your gut.
Stop and think about your word choices, how you present things.
I was so angry. I was angry at my husband. I was angry at myself. I just couldn't move on.
It's hell. It's not a superpower. It's hard. It's bankrupting us. It's my child's not going to be normal. I'm going to care for him forever. I don't want to hear that it's a superpower.
If you're a parent and you're hearing this, you've got to get whatever you can to take care of your marriage.
I was just like, you got to provide so that we don't lose this kid. And we got to parent all these other ones too.
He was one. And I was starting to be like, maybe I'm just imagining this. By his second birthday, I was absolutely convinced and knew.
Welcome back to another episode of Get Unpuzzled, the podcast where we break down barriers, connect families, and bring real, honest conversations to the autism and disability community. I'm your host, Whitney Price, and today's episode is a special one. We're joined by two of everyone's favorite moms from the hit Netflix series Love on the Spectrum, Lise Tomlinson and Nicci Smith. These two incredible women aren't just TV moms. They're real-life rock stars who have navigated the ups and downs of parenting 4 children each, including one on the autism spectrum. From laughter to heartbreak, routines to resilience, Nicci and Lise are sharing the good, the bad, and the beautifully real stories behind the cameras. You won't want to miss this honest and heartfelt conversation about motherhood, neurodiversity, and the power of connection. Let's dive in. Let's go all the way back to the beginnings of the diagnosis. Lise, how did you guys come about noticing differences in Connor that needed addressed?
So just really quick, I had a background with working with autistic children. That was what I did out of college. I worked at the New England Center for Autism at the time. It's now the New England Center for Children. It's in Massachusetts. And I worked there, and I worked in the early intervention preschool with the nonverbal children, like literal picture exchange, no words, just the profound room, the early intervention. So I was dealing with parents who were newly diagnosed with these beautiful little sweet babies, didn't know what was going on. And that's who I worked with. I mean, aggressive hair pulls, bites, I was going through all of that at work. And I was this fresh out of college know-it-all. So, I didn't have any kids. So there I was, and I did a lot of respite care. Fast forward, I end up becoming a parent. Connor was my first child. And by Connor's first birthday, I started to see some weird things, but he was one. And I was starting to be like, maybe I'm just imagining this. By his second birthday, I was absolutely convinced and knew he just had sensory issues. We all went in to sing him happy birthday. He lost his mind. He lined up his toys. He toe walked. We loved Bob the Builder. When Bob the Builder turned off, 4 hours later, he was running the exact episode with all of the accents at 2. I mean, I was like, so I kept telling my husband, he's on spectrum. And my husband was telling me, that's all you know. Those were the kids you worked with. You just think you see it. So I started going to doctors who in that time, late 90s, early 2000s, he was looking at you and talking. He wasn't autistic.
Yeah.
That was sort of, the doctors were like, Mom, you're stressing out. Calm down. You're lucky. Boston Children's Hospital neurologist told me she had kids with actual issues to see, but I needed to leave. So at that point, I started to think, wow, maybe it is me. And then really quick, got to Atlanta. We moved to Atlanta. Nicci's heard this story a million times.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm in a pediatrician's office with my twins. Now I have 2 more kids, right? So Connor's now almost 5 years old. Twins are there. They're like 2. They're have ear infections. We're in the pediatrician office for the twins. And Connor's there because I'm a mom just taking all my kids, doing his thing. Tippy-toeing around the room, toe walking, stimming, talking, not looking, doesn't need a single soul involved with his conversation. He's having a ball, and he's just in the corner of the exam room, and the twins are on the table. And she's looking at the twins, and I could give a hoot about their ear infections. I was stressing out about Connor. And I looked at this doctor and I said, "Do you see this?" And she said, "Yes." I'm like, "Are you okay with this?" Because I felt like everyone was telling me I was crazy. She's like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "Help me.
Thank God. Yeah.
Help me." And at the time, we needed two different professionals to co-sign a diagnosis. So we went to a developmental psychologist and another professional, and in silos had him evaluated. And literally on the same day, they both came back with the same findings, that he was on the spectrum. And then he was almost 5. And at that point, I felt like I had burned 3 years of mom gut. So moms, dads, parents, caregivers, grandparents, listen to your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Just advocate and fight for your kids, because I felt like I had burned 3 years of intervention that I knew was so critical, because I had been in an early intervention room and I saw the benefits of early intervention. So now I sat on this for 3 years thinking it was me. And I was so angry. I was angry at my husband. I was angry at myself. I just couldn't move on. How mad I was at myself for allowing me to drink that Kool-Aid when every alarm bell was going off in my mom's heart and gut. And then I couldn't get past of the 3 years that I let go. And I just kept, every time I got into a therapist, I went on about how I knew this 3 years ago. And finally a doctor stopped me and said, "I need you to stop beating yourself up over that time. That's gone and we can't get back. The brain is not a cooked egg." That's what he said to me. Brain is not a cooked egg. The people have strokes and brain injuries and remediate back. Stop. Everything's going to be okay. You're here now. Move on. And it took someone to shake me and say that to me. So I want parents to hear that too. If you feel like you're dragging the boat or you're behind the ball, the brain is not a cooked egg, and we can start from wherever you are. So just cling to that too, because that really helped me forgive myself, and then just start to focus on what I lost instead of what I lost, is where I was and where we were going to go.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
That's kind of Connor's story.
Nicci, what was Tanner's story?
Lisa and I, we've heard each other's stories.
I love it too. Good.
So similar, very, very similar. I had a verbal little boy who was developing normally until about 2.5. And then we just noticed a lot of self-isolation. Just if we're at playgroup, other kids go to the slide, he's going to the swings. They come to the swings, he goes to the slide. He started averting his gaze a lot. Like Connor, what was so tricky was he never lost his ability to speak. And with family and close people, I would say that, like, looking back, knowing what I know now, like, verbal acquisition slowed down, but he never really regressed. He just kind of stayed where he was. And conversational ability and ability to, like, have 5 or 6 exchanges didn't really develop very well, but he could do enough that he could easily fool you. It was when the hand clapping and the stimming, and Tanner craved a lot of pressure. He was never self-injurious, but he would slam himself into the wall, like, he enjoyed that feeling. He did a lot of hands, hyperfixation. Like, back then it was DVD covers. He'd watch the same movie, like you said, over and over and over, and script it, use that for language. We'd ride along in the car and he would hold the DVD cover like it was the Mona Lisa and just stare at it and move it. He lined up his toys. But it took until he was 4 to get the diagnosis. And like we said, you had to have different entities. And we got 2 votes for high functioning autism, 1 vote for Asperger's syndrome, and 1 vote for PDD NOS. At the time they had this plethora of diagnoses that they would give you. And we went with high functioning autism because it seemed to make the most sense. So that's what we got when he was 4.
What was that last diagnosis?
Pervasive developmental delay not otherwise specified, PDD NOS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard that in a long time. I don't
No.
even, is that even in the DSM anymore?
I don't think it is. At that time, it was a big deal though. And like kids like Tanner that could talk. And like one of the I'll never forget, Mark and I, I mean, you're at your most stressed in these diagnostic interviews. And we took him to one at USC School of Medicine, and it was all these medical students and all these people staring at us. We were young, and I would have been much more confident now walking in there. But you're giving your baby to these people you don't know, all worried. And I remember they got him in the room and we're watching through the window. And he looks right up at the examiner and goes, "Hey, what's that?" And point. And I was like, "No, you can't do that. They're going to tell me nothing's wrong with you." But then, as the exam went on, it became very apparent, the things he was doing. But we always laughed. And I think Connor was the same way. Tanner was tough to diagnose because of the verbal ability.
So I know anger is definitely one of the emotions that we talk about that you go through, not just because of how hard it is to fight for that diagnosis, but what are some of the other emotions that you guys initially went through when you heard that your child was diagnosed with autism?
Go ahead, Lise.
I was punched with unbelievable grief because my backstory even goes a little further before Connor, and I was just living my life. We had a lot of fertility issues. I had 7 miscarriages before I had Connor, and we had gone through some pretty intense fertility treatment to get Connor. So when not only did I find out I was pregnant, but then it was a little boy, and I'd had his name picked out from like when I was in high school. I always knew I wanted a Connor. I don't know why, just what I loved that name. I mean, I had his name picked out before I even had a husband. And when I met my husband, I'm like, if we have a boy, his name's Connor. I just need you to know that. And, so then when I found out, and I was like, it was my Connor that I had dreamed of for years and years and years. And then I was also working with autistic kids. So then when I got that diagnosis, not only I knew what that meant because I've been working with these families. I knew it. And I would go home from work. And this is just being raw and real. I was no kids. I'd go home from work and I'd be like, whoo, I at least get to go home.
Yeah.
I would say, that's because it was a lot of work. And I used to do respite care for families on the weekends because it is so hard for marriages and couples and moms, and they need a break. They also need a break to just go be and have fun. And I used to do like respite care because you can't just hire any babysitter kid down the street.
Right. You got to,
just can't let anybody come babysit because, there's things, especially if they run or do things. So I knew what it meant. And when I got that diagnosis, not only that, I'd fought so hard to be a mom. I was so angry and grief stricken because my little boy that I had dreamed of since college, I'd already named, was going to play baseball and football and break hearts and be that guy at school. Now I had this kid. So the Connor I prayed and dreamed for in my mind was taken from me. I had this Connor that I'm like, now what?
Yeah.
Now what? So grief. And I felt sorry for myself. And I was so mad. And I was just, again, mad at anger and grief, I think were the biggest things. And I felt robbed. I felt like, okay, God, I'm a Christian, believe in God. And I was sort of mad at him. I was like, God, you put me through the ringer to get him. I dedicated my career to these families. And now this. And then I think God works in if you are a Christian, you believe in God, God does his winks and taps and puts people. I had a friend came up to me and said, who better to be Connor's mom than you? God was prepared for him.
Yeah.
But then you get smacked in the face and you put on your big girl britches and you're like, you're right. So, but it was grief, anger, and a little bit of shock, I think.
Nicci, what types of emotions would you say that you went through? Would it be pretty similar to what?
Honestly, yeah. She pretty much said all the same things I was feeling. And there was definitely, the only other one I would throw in is some guilt. Like did I do something? You know, I kept racing in my mind, going like, I was 26 years old when I had him. I was like in extremely healthy. I'm like, I didn't drink any alcohol. I don't smoke. You know, with this is my husband that I've been with forever. Like, what could have gone wrong? You know, that he has this. And you know, you go back through your pregnancy, like, was there something that I did? Is there, you know, is it my DNA? What, all those things run through your mind, which, you know, okay, if it was, it was, you know. And now I know that was a hard pill to swallow. And like Lisa said, just, I mean, honestly, the feeling sorry for myself. I feel, and I'm sure Lisa was the same. I didn't let it show on the surface, but in my heart, a lot of bitterness. I was very bitter.
Where in terms of language,
He
expressive,
is
and
very high support needs. So Connor is semi-verbal. So he's got a very good broad vocabulary. He does a lot of scripting. He enjoys specific movies that we've watched a million times, but
Yeah.
there's no like intraverbal communication.
I had a mom message me, and I was just, it really hit me in my heart, because she was under the impression that Tanner was higher support than he is. And our conversation, I realized that she was thinking that. And the question she was asking me, I couldn't even really relate to, because he can do all those things. And I don't know, it just hit me in my heart. Like, I don't ever want those mothers to feel like I'm going like, oh, autism, look how far we've come. And do you know what I'm saying? And make
Yes.
it look too glossy, you know, because it is not glossy, and it wasn't glossy at the beginning. I mean, obviously we're trying, and especially with Tanner being like the joy cheerleader, which is great, but he's not always joyful. He struggles greatly with anxiety. He has OCD. Lisa's seen it. I mean, you know, I mean, he can be very difficult at times. And I don't know. I feel like that's a big, it's a big issue that moms like Lisa and I need to be very sensitive to. You know what I mean? The fact that we are blessed with very high functioning young men, you know, who have got good verbal ability and can do a lot of their own self-care. And, you know, finding that like middle ground where we're really supporting and pushing those parents to the front. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, you know, coming from a show where they showcase
The higher.
the highest highs and the lowest lows,
Yeah.
we don't get to see. And
because
I
there
always
are edits in
wondered,
that show. Yeah, there are edits. I mean, because Connor, when they'll break a scene, or Connor will walk away and stim and talk to himself.
Mhm.
And but when, you know, so as he's matured into this mid-20s, but when we were younger, it was very hard. When Connor was younger, like he couldn't, we couldn't discriminate as to, okay, this is when I can stim, and this is when I'm going to do this, or he would dysregulate. We couldn't get haircuts. I
Right.
mean, haircuts brought stomach aches. I don't know how many barbers literally got cut fighting him. Um, Parents would stare at us in the barbershop. I mean, that sensory stuff would be over the top. We had meltdowns in public. You know, Connor was, it has been a massive journey and lots of intervention. So, you know, hopefully parents will see, you know, they're seeing our boys on screen, but even when we're filming, when there's a break in the action, Connor's off stimming, talking to himself, and we got to bring him in. And it's amazing when you see all of the castmates together. I remember I was so starstruck to meet Tanner, and
Same.
I was like, there he is. But when we finally meet, we sit down, and I'm like, wow, you know, like you do start to see the level that, you know, these individuals are on the spectrum. And you know, there's just, I mean, Nicci, you've seen Connor walk off and just
Oh yeah. And
delay and script and talk to
yeah.
himself.
And Tanner Tanner will grab you and talk your ears off about Mighty Joe Young or The Emperor's New Groove or whatever. And he's 26 years old, you know, like for an hour nonstop in your ear if you would let him. But people don't see that, you know, necessarily, because he is capable of doing the other, but he can't sustain it, not all the time, and not without support, and not without direction. And it took the years of therapy to get him there. And so, and he still has to have support and scaffolding and, a push and a guide to do what he's doing. And I just, I don't ever want anyone to feel like we're, misrepresenting or being insensitive in any way, to higher support need families, because I personally feel like, everything is relative. Like I compare our family to families that have all typical children, and our life is harder. It is. I mean, it is. But I compare our life to parents that have nonverbal children, and our life is a cakewalk. And I want other people to know that I know that, I want people to know that I realize that, there are much harder scenarios, and those parents, I feel like, really deserve the limelight too. And it's harder for them to get it because their child may not be able to talk, or their child may not be able to get in front of a camera and do something performative or whatever, or informational. And I feel like, there's a little piece of that that's a little unfair. And it is, you know what I mean? It is what it is.
I have to say, I think what I struggled with on the show in our season 2, and I think it was the first episode or the second episode where Connor had a panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the fence about how I felt about that being put on a global show. Because Connor lost it. I mean, that was real. That he was dysregulated. He freaked out. They called me and they said, has Connor ever had a panic attack? And I mean, Connor has dysregulated. I would never have called it that. But anyway, they put me on the phone with him. Connor was nervous about that. He was embarrassed. He's like, I don't want that. Actually, I think one of the best things that people wrote to us and said, watching that reality of Connor just being so in a foreign situation, never dating, falling apart and having to go out on that patio. And then, him and I kind of walking through it, but then him getting back into that room was huge for him. And so even now we have times where there's stress and dysregulation, and we have to take a step back and kind of work through it. Connor has fidgets and stim toys and things that help him still, but they're more discreet. And he's learned over the years of being in enough of these situations and us taking a moment where he can now advocate for himself and say, I need a minute. I can't do this right now.
You're right. They only see what they want to showcase on the television. Yeah. They haven't seen what you went through from the time that they were born to get to that point. And for someone that's a parent to a child on the higher support needs that doesn't have that type of verbal communication, yes, I see the profound autism side. Now, we have enough communication where Connor's not using an AAC device, so we have some less struggles than some other kids that I've seen. But then I'm also seeing the other side where we have a child that's completely verbal but has ADHD on top of it. They might have bipolar disorder or schizophrenia on top of it, and their amount of medications to keep up with and lack of sleep is through the roof. And everyone, and that's, I think, something so important to hit on, is that every child on the spectrum is completely different. Even if they seem or appear like they are able to live on their own or, with lower supports, we don't know what it took to get there, and we don't know what they're still facing. No one has been diagnosed with autism and led an easy life.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing to put, because, we do have such a broad, diverse group, and it's important to make sure that, and we're never going to make everybody happy, but we want to make sure that at least everybody is able to understand that we all have different struggles. No one's not struggling. How can we better support each other?
For me, it's interesting that you have us both, and I say this because I don't know if it'll resonate with any of your parents, and I think it's important to see. And Nicci and Mark will tell you it wasn't all hearts and flowers. But what was so amazing, as I've gotten very close to Nicci and Mark and their family, and they've gotten close to ours. What I found beautiful, and I don't want to say this for you, but like, they never thought about quitting on each other, where my marriage didn't survive it. my marriage didn't survive it. And I think it's interesting that you have both of us here because we can speak to the sticking it out and running and staying in the trench and the foxhole together. And then a marriage that couldn't survive it. And I think what I would have done different to try to fight a little harder for my family. I mean, obviously it takes two to make it, two to break it. And I wasn't the only decision maker. He walked away, but, I was so angry, as I said, and I felt like I lost those 3 years. I think that anger took over and I really faced it to my husband because he didn't believe me and he didn't support me and he didn't back me and he made it seem like I was the problem. So I think that started to nail into our coffin a little bit, and neither of us passed it. So I think it's interesting. So my biggest thing, and I always say this, is the best gift you can give your kids and your family is your marriage. I believe that.
Yeah.
I am upset I couldn't make that happen for mine, but again, there's a plan and things happened a different way for me. But I think if you're a parent and you're hearing this in this group in West Virginia, and you've got to get whatever you can to take care of your marriage. If you feel like you're hanging on by a thread right now, you guys fight for it because it's not easier and it's not pretty. I mean, obviously, if there's anything like major abuse, that's not. But if it's just, this is too hard, then roll your sleeves up and get back in there and try to find each other again. Because the best gift I believe you can give your Connor or any of your kids is that solid base, and then just fight together. But again, it was very hard doing it as a single mom. I don't recommend it. So
it left some scars on both of us as individuals and as a couple that honestly we're still working on. You know what I mean? And I mean, it definitely, there's some bitterness. There were some walls put up. The financial pressure on him was just off the chain and unfair. And then the emotional pressure and the pressure to keep the ball rolling because he was working so hard to provide. He pretty much kind of disengaged a little bit emotionally. I feel like he didn't mean to, but I think it was just, but we both just sort of like, it was like, this is your role. This is mine. Now let's go, and we just sort of put our heads down and did it, which it ended up working out. And it was for Tanner's benefit, for sure. It benefited Tanner, but it wasn't the greatest thing on our marriage. So to any marriage out there that you feel like we are literally just running this business together, you're not wrong. And I mean, that doesn't help, but it makes you feel seen, I mean, that is how I felt for years. I was just like, you got to provide so that we don't lose this kid, and we got to parent all these other ones too. And I got to keep them running, and I've got to nurture them, and I got to find the next therapy and the next right school and the next right, intervention for him. And we can't let the other three go either. So it's just, when I look back and I think of like parents, the younger parents who are in it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, superstars. I'm like, how did we do that? I mean, how did we pull that off? I look back at how busy I used to be and what I used to have on me. So all you young parents out there, give yourself the biggest pat on the back because it is a rough road. It really is. It's a tremendous amount of responsibility and effort.
And I think I want to say to the younger parents, you, Whitney, you and your husband or whatever, this is so true. And it's so basic, and they do it on airplanes. Every time you get on an airplane, they say,
yeah.
And it's a cliche, but if that mask drops, put it on yourself first.
Yeah.
And that seems so, as a mother, we just want to give our hearts and our souls to our children. It took me years to understand that. It really does. I mean, and I still have guilt at 53 years old.
Oh, me too.
My oldest is 26 and my youngest is 20, and I still feel guilty sometimes, but there is really something to the self-care. You will be a better parent. You will be so take that step back and recharge your batteries. Make sure people get safe, but please, 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 caregivers.
Yes.
You're gonna run out of gas. And then what? Then who's gonna be benefited and who's gonna be served by that?
No one.
You can't allow it. You've got to do it. And then, my other thing, it's what I told Connor, if you did watch the show, and it has been my mantra, and it's literally what I tell my kids. What happens when you stop pedaling a bike? It falls. You just keep pedaling your bike. And obviously, like I said, you do need the self-care, but you can't quit is my point behind the pedaling. You just can't quit. Quitting is not an option. And I wasn't raised like that, and I wasn't going to quit. My husband left the team because he just couldn't cope, and he took more of an uncle role, and that's okay. But who was going to hold the fort then? What if I just had to pedal? I didn't know where the darn bike was going. I didn't know if it was a hill, an incline, downslope, a rocky road, pop tires, but I had to pedal. I had no choice. I just rode and rode and rode, and I don't know. I feel blessed beyond compare, and it's not because of Love on the Spectrum. It is not because of Love on the Spectrum. I am so blessed that God gave me Connor, because Connor, forget Netflix, forget Love on the Spectrum. Connor, before any of that, and will long after it's gone, gives a lens to our family, gives a perspective to the world that our family is so blessed to have because of him.
Yeah.
And we are all better people because we have Connor in our life, and has nothing to do with being on a show.
Right. I would agree 100%. Makes the siblings so much better people. I see it in Lisa's children. They are precious and delightful and compassionate and kind. And there's like a maturity, I think, in special needs siblings, like an emotional maturity that you don't see in a lot of other people of similar age. And I think it's because they have seen a life that they instinctively realize is going to be harder than theirs with someone they dearly love. And it just does something to them, and in a great way. And I think that's one of the biggest blessings. And, Elise talking about, keeping the marriage intact. Another thing that I felt like was really profound in my, I guess, eventual metamorphosis towards doing better with the acceptance piece, when I finally woke up and realized that there was not a normal Tanner hiding behind this one. And I think for years, I really kept thinking, we can make him normal because he can talk. He's able-bodied. He has no physical ailments at all. We can make him normal. And honestly, and I hope that younger parents will hear this and the light bulb will come on a lot earlier in their life than it did for me. Normal is not that great. I have 3 normal children, and life is hard, and life wasn't perfect or easy for me. And now that we're where we are, mine are 28, 26, 23, and 19. Some of the things that I used to grieve, like I literally used to cry when I'd be alone. And it was a lot of times alone in the car, I would cry. And I would think, I'm never going to have a daughter-in-law from him. I'm never going to be a grandma to his kids. Like, I'll never watch him buy his first house and maintain it. And don't get me wrong, those are amazing milestones. And of course they're wonderful. And I have had one get married and it's amazing. But then again, I see the struggle and the hardships that typical kids go through. And I'm like, there is some beauty to the fact that Tanner will never face. And this season of his life with the show and all this incredible opportunity and amazing things that only happened to him because he has autism, and he's doing it with me. If he was the typical 26-year-old guy, he'd be doing it with his girlfriend or his wife. He wouldn't be wanting me. And I'm like, there's so many gifts that you can't imagine when you're in the hard years that they are going to come. They're going to show up. It just takes a long, long time. So it's not, you do have to give some stuff up, but it isn't as bad as you think it's going to be.
In the unforeseen blessings that do come.
Yes. Yes.
Because you're so down in your pity party, or you're so down in the weeds of trying to do what the day-to-day is, you don't see the gifts. And yeah. I saw it today. It's like, there's so many victories are sweeter too.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I have a younger son who is athletically gifted, quarterback, all the things. And it was just always such a rush to go watch him perform and do things. And they were cool. And they were great. But the victories are just a little sweeter with
They
him.
are.
And I can't, it's not like it's favoritism. It's just, man, when I see him, I get so emotional because I'm like, you worked so much
hard to get there.
And it's just, and all of us moms and dads and caregivers, grandparents, let's take the W, wear the t-shirt, because that's great. Even if it's going to be one day with your little Connor saying my ear hurt, one day if he can just rest, that would be like a W, right? I mean, that's going to be great.
A huge win. It is so true. Anything they do, it feels like it's magnified 1,000 times bigger. Every accomplishment, everything, because everything flashes through your mind that you went through, all those waiting rooms, all those forms, all that sitting across from them, trying to get it out of them, and they can't do it. And then you watch them achieve something and you're like, there really are miracles. They really do happen.
Let's talk about that emotional support aspect. So when we are talking about going through those struggles in our marriage, and when they are little and you are having to fight for the appointments and the therapies, who emotionally supported you, and how did you overcome being in a spot, at least being a single parent, and Nicci having these other 4 kids that you have to keep up with? Who emotionally supported you guys?
Go ahead.
My mom. My mom was amazing. My mom's amazing. My mom actually moved to Georgia to be closer to us, not because of Connor's diagnosis, just me. And at the time, my sister so really my family, I was blessed in that way. And friends, I have just a couple of friends that are truly almost like sisters to me, and they helped. So it was that I did get some professional help, but became very expensive. And I was like, well, I just got done saying with the mask dropping, but then, me or Connor, like I had to kind of suck it up. And, so I leaned heavily on family. And like I said, I had just a few people that I would trust I had to find a trusted babysitter, because I ended up having to go to work and leave them on top of all of this. And just, I don't know how I got through any of that, but I think it was just, I just had I can't quit attitude. That's not an A, B, C, or D. That's not in the multiple choice. And then I just had an incredible, I can't say enough about my mother. My mother is a rock star, and she's the best grandma, and she's just would do anything for me. So my mom helped. My mom rode in on a white horse, big time, and my sister. So that helped. And then, obviously Connor's therapist, but they weren't supporting me. I just, like I said, it's family. So thank God for my family. I don't know if other people have that option, but I was very blessed.
Really same. And I would say for me, it was even a few key girlfriends. And it wasn't even that they necessarily knew what to say. They just listened. They just let me vent. And I would just talk about it incessantly. And I look back now and I'm like, I'm sure they were probably wishing I would shut up about autism, but I would just vent it all out. Just get it out and just talk their ears off, and, hash out all the options, and should I do this or should I do that, and blah, blah, blah. So really, other women are the best, just having really good friends who are willing to just listen, even if they have no idea how to help you.
So I think if you can find some, like, whatever, your support group is. I remember when Connor and I spoke with you guys, you had gorgeous parents and families all zooming in, and I loved that. And I loved being able to connect with them. So, look for each other. Look for each other too.
Mm-hmm.
It's been our lifeline, our support group. My husband and I do not live around family. So when we did receive that initial diagnosis, we were on our own completely. We moved up here for his job, and we did not gain any additional support from our family. We were taught in a very old school manner to suffer in that silence because the label was bad. We didn't know enough about it. And
wow, that's
we
hard.
didn't want to hurt anybody's reputation. But the reality was we lived in this isolated world for 2 years and we didn't speak. So we suffered financially in silence. We didn't tell anybody at our job, even though we were needing to make schedule arrangements so that I could drop him off at therapy, drive back home, pick him up, drive back to work. And we were absolutely draining ourselves because we didn't have anything. So part of the reason that we started this support group was because we needed it.
Yeah.
We were craving somebody else that had a kid in our
Understood.
situation that, yeah, sure. There's,
Yeah.
there's so many things that you talk about. And like you guys said, having that connection is everything, because you can go to that mom and say, you're not going to believe what happened. And
Right.
they've likely had it happen to them, or
Yeah.
they're going to say, yeah, I completely understand. And, that isolation starts to melt a little bit. And then when we're talking about things like financial difficulties and struggles with therapies, you start to build a group with connections that can help you find that speech therapist or
Yes.
help you overcome insurance
Yeah.
claims and financial
They've
burdens.
done
So
it. Yeah.
our situation was a little bit different, but you would be shocked of how many other parents are in the exact same boat
Wow.
with being on this island with no support other than just the love that we're gaining from each other and those therapists that, really do become your second family, and those new parents that are just diagnosed. And then you're finding these other parents who are also getting their own diagnosis. So
Wow.
it does become,
That's why Nikki and I feel like so blessed that we have such visibility now because of our boys. We're not like riding their coattails. We're their sidekicks proudly. But I feel like so happy that we can stand there. And I wish there was a Lise and Nicci 20
Yes.
years ago that I could have looked up and gone, it's going to be okay. Look at that Lise and Nicci and their boys. Like,
Right.
I wish, because I was so freaking scared about the future. Now the future is just glorious, but I am so glad that because of our boys being who they are and how they evolved and them getting selected, and now as a result, we're kind of in their shadow, which is amazing. Love it. Love being there.
Yeah.
That Nikki and I can be there for you parents, and you can see, like, yes, the road was hard and rocky, but ladies and gentlemen, the future is bright and exciting, and eyes are opening. Just the very fact that there's a show highlighting our individuals, who knows, in more, maybe they will highlight more of the profoundly affected families and show that beautiful story of what,
Yes.
who knows where this is going, but it's just getting more and more inclusive. But we're here to say, we have our battle scars, but we're standing here and we're thriving. Our young men are thriving. And Connor still lives with me. Connor does not live independently. Connor does not drive. Tanner's living independently. I mean, Tanner living his life. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, so I'm just glad that there is our names just happen to be Nikki and Lise. I'm so grateful for the platform that our boys have provided to let us be here for you guys.
Yes, absolutely. That would have been because that was another massive emotion in 2002 when we got the diagnosis, and I was really seeking the diagnosis from 2000 to 2002. I mean, there was internet, but it was dial up. You had one modem in the house and it was slow. There wasn't, we weren't photographing everything and getting on Instagram 25 times a day. I felt just like I was on this sad, lonely, scary island. And everybody felt sorry for me, but nobody understood me. And it was horrible. I mean, and I look now like you, and I can name several others, all these young moms who are handling it, working, parenting other children, hosting podcasts, connecting, advocating. It's amazing. I mean, that has to be so helpful emotionally, just to feel like there is life out there. There are other people who are experiencing what I'm experiencing. There is support. There is understanding. That's incredible. Incredible. And if we can be the beacon, the light at the end of the tunnel, that's great.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about criticism or critics that I'm sure you guys have had because of your platform that you now have after Love on the Spectrum, season 1, season 2, upcoming probably season 3. I know for myself, being this newly formed advocate who's going throughout the entire state of West Virginia, telling my story, telling my son's story. It's empowering, but it's also come with critics.
Mm-hmm.
What has it been like, and how have you guys been able to shift that mindset from not only empowering mothers like myself, but hushing critics because they don't know
Nicci does
what
better.
your
Nicci's
story
better at
is?
this.
Now, I have 2 words for you.
Nicci's better at it than Nicci has a better attitude than I do.
Delete, block. Delete the comment, block them. No, honestly, I feel like we've been incredibly blessed, because I feel like for every 5,000 positive comments, we might get 2 negative or ugly. But we've gotten some, and we've gotten some that have been pretty nasty and pretty hurtful, either accusing him of faking or calling me, like saying, oh, you're capital, or like, how does it feel capitalizing on your son's handicap? Or are you having a good time pushing your handicapped child out in front of the world? Those hurt more than anything. But it's funny. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying nobody can make me mad. They can make me mad for sure. And things can hurt my feelings. But I do have this weird, most of the time, I say 75% of the time, just this weird feeling of confidence. Like, I know how hard we worked. All those memories are vivid in my mind. I know how much we financially sacrificed and emotionally sacrificed, and what my marriage went through, and my other children went through. And I'm like, my results speak for themselves. Look at him. He's precious. I mean, he is a precious, delightful young man. He's an odd one, but he is a sweet one. I mean, he's a different kind of guy, but he's a great guy. And we worked and we did that, with God's help and a lot of wonderful people. But I'm like, if we don't appeal to you, okay, go on your merry way. That's fine. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and neither is Tanner's. And that's okay. Not everybody else is my cup of tea. I do have this weird sense of just kind of peace that I know who we are. I know what we're bringing to the table, and we haven't faked anything. And everything that you're seeing, we worked hard to get where we are. I do feel like the longer this goes on, because the public obviously is so fickle. They're fascinated with you. They think you're cool. You're the new thing. You're sweet. And then inevitably, most famous people get, or that have a moment of fame, get turned on at some point. So I do have concerns. He was on season 2, and then as we go into season 3, which Lisa and I have not seen, and we don't know what's coming. What will happen? You know what I mean? Like, will there be something that comes across the wrong way in a social media post, or someone interprets the wrong way? But you can't live in fear. I can't live in fear. I have to always remember that the reason we went down this path is because we truly believe Tanner could be a beacon of light and hope, and that we have been so much more of that than we could have ever imagined. And that is worth the risk. That's worth the risk of being criticized. And, sometimes being criticized just makes you tougher, and so that's kind of how I'm feeling, at least right now. That might change. At least you speak.
I've gotten some tough ones. I mean, our family was on it. And so there was, I got a few things online, or people would message just like, I'm overbearing, I'm pushy, I am a helicopter, just like I'm all of these like horrible things on Connor. So, I mean, now a lot of it has been positive, but that does hurt. We also recently got someone who said they were on the spectrum, and they felt that Connor was pretty shameless for performing and pretending to be autistic just to get on a show.
That one made me mad too, just to interject. I was mad about that one too.
That shattered me, because I just thought, oh my gosh, you just completely belittled his every obstacle, and they don't know. But I mean, so yes, the criticism, we are on a global stage. We really are. Our family is on a global stage. Our boys are. We get recognized in New York City, downtown Atlanta, London. I mean, people stop him. So he is recognizable. So we put ourselves out there. We did it knowingly. And my husband is the first one to always remind me when I'm coming with a licked wound of hearing something that was said. He said, we knew what we were doing when we went for this. And with all the rough, all the smooth, we got to take some of the rough. So I don't handle it as well. I'm very sensitive. I mean, I do. I literally will screenshot something to Nicci and I'm like, talk me down, talk me down. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts and it's hard. But I think you need a good friend to help calm down. But it is hard. But is it going to stop us? No.
No.
And I know, I guess you have to take some peace and solace in knowing yourself at your age and knowing your intentions. And our intentions have only ever been, if anything, I feel like we've exposed ourselves to be,
vulnerable. Yeah. Very vulnerable.
And scary. So, if people are going to not kind of respect that and see, and we did it to help people. Like, honestly, I mean, is it exciting? I would be lying if I said it's not exciting and fun to get picked for. It is. It's fun. It's flattering. It is. But it's also comes with responsibility. And one of the things, and I know Tanner does, and it has been our mantra from minute one, is Connor, because I have to relate things back to movies for him. I'm like, you're Charlie. And we're at Willy Wonka's factory and we got the golden ticket in the bar. Okay. You're Charlie on the sidewalk and you got that golden ticket. We are going to share it. Mm-hmm. We are going to pay it forward wherever he is needed, wanted, anything that has to do with any advocating for the autism community. Right. We are there for nothing, for everything, but for not any compensation, if I must say that. We are there to give back and to promote and to help, because this platform now, it comes with some power and we want to use it all to give back and help.
I feel like there's been just so many divine appointments in this whole thing, the way it played out, even his getting chosen. And then the fact that Connor was on the same season and we met, and the way our lives have lined up and the friendship that has become, which I feel like is going to take us down a few other paths. When I got that message from that mom I mentioned earlier, I don't know why that impacted me so deeply, but it made me feel this sense of stop and think about your word choices, how you present things, how you, I don't use the word market, but it just really hit me that some of it, Tanner refers to autism as his superpower. And honestly, that was organic. Nobody told him to say that. He said it because he likes superhero movies. And one time somebody asked him, Tanner, what is autism to you? And he goes, it's my superpower. And he said it very authentically. So we've kind of let him go with that. And he's very childlike. It's a natural type thing for him to say. But I heard this same mom of a very profoundly affected child say, it drives me crazy when people refer to it as a superpower. It's hell. It's not a superpower. It's hard. It's bankrupting us. My child's not going to be normal. I'm going to care for him forever. I don't want to hear that it's a superpower. And that stopped me in my tracks because, when I think about what Tanner has overcome, when I think about the impact he's having on the world, when I think about the way he's making people see things differently, even in the fact that he doesn't even realize he's doing it a lot of the time, that is a superpower. And I don't want to take that light from him. And I would never want to diminish what he has accomplished. But at the same time, I would never want to use language or say something that comes off as insensitive or we're not seeing someone that has it harder. And so I don't know, I felt like that was maybe just something as we move into 2025, and I've already done it a couple of times. If I see a chance to say, hey, yeah, we'd love to speak for you or do this opportunity or promote this, but why don't you talk to this parent? Why don't you go get their perspective? Why don't you think about showcasing that family? Because we've had a bunch of chances, and I'm saying we're not going to take we are, we're going to take whatever, because Tanner's worked hard too, but I just want to make sure that there's an even distribution of opportunity and that the other scenarios are also being brought to light, because I don't know, it just really, it really hurt. It hurt my heart when I heard that, because I thought, oh man, I hope that we've never made anybody feel badly, because that was never the intention. You know, we're literally just celebrating what Tanner has done, but we don't want anybody else to think that we're making light of it in any way.
No, and I think that goes back to us needing to realize, or not us, but the community needing to realize that autism is a spectrum.
It is.
And everyone, and the fact that Tanner is making those words himself and stating for himself, that is everything. But I was one of the parents that was really struggling with that, because we have seen a different side, but I have also seen a community where, again, we can have these children that have so many hidden talents and they are absolute geniuses in their own ways. But they're struggling with so many other different emotions and connections, other diagnoses that come along with it. So and we have to come together as a community for autism.
Yes. I think that it's really something like that we should all be talking about as, you know, time goes on. You know, like somebody was talking about like the divide between like level 1 parents and level 3 parents, but there should not be. You know, there should not be. This should be a mutually uplifting, mutually supportive thing. We're walking a little bit different journey, but under the same cloud, you know, the same umbrella. You know, our journeys are going kind of right and left, but we are still under the same umbrella. And we need to be constantly supporting and lifting each other up. Be like, we get to move forward a little bit. Now you get to move forward a little bit, you know. I don't know. That's just what I want to put out there, you know, and just make sure that everyone feels seen and supported and loved and appreciated, and that everyone's children are just as important, you know, regardless of the.
That's how we're going to spread this awareness to create that world of acceptance.
And to be silly and funny, Lise and I would both say to anyone that thinks our boys are faking, we'll give them to you to have dinner for the evening. And then bring them back.
Have them for a weekend.
Yeah, have them for a weekend, and tell me at the end of the weekend whether you think he's faking or not. That one's just so funny if you think about it. It's like, oh boy, okay.
That was something that I have said, because photos you can post online on Instagram and they are beautiful, and you get to showcase that one split second moment, but you didn't see the meltdowns that occurred before. You didn't see, you know, the messes that we just cleaned up. And and that's something, the criticism that we have gone through with, you know, we will post a small little clip of him scripting and they'll go, he's verbal, he looks completely fine. And we're just beating our head against the wall going, he's scripting, he's not, you know, there's no purposeful communication back and forth between us. And you know, if he's an eloper, so if we just let him go out the door, we may never see him again, you know. And but again, they see that small clip, and everybody's mind just goes to this other place that
it is interesting. And that has been a great way for us to educate. We get a lot of, I say some of our heaviest criticisms has been when we've done go live on, you know, Instagram or TikTok. And my daughters have done it with him more than I have. And Tanner uses a lot of echolalia. It's how he processes. Like, he repeats what you said because he needs to hear it again so he can get that in his head. And then he knows how to formulate his response. So the girls can tell when he's not really understanding through the screen. So they'll like repeat the question for him and be like, Tanner, blah, 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 you know, or give him, you know, whatever the asker said. And then he'll repeat their words back to them. And then people will be pumped, you know, you speak for him. You need to let him talk. You need to, you know, back off of him. You're controlling him. Let him do his thing. We're like, no, they just know how he communicates, and they understand, they can see the look in his eyes and realize that he did not process what you just said. He needs to hear it 2 more times before he's going to get, and you know, those lives go so fast, he can't go at that speed. But the typical person who has no understanding of any of that will, you know, they have no idea. And so they just make an assumption and say something critical. But that's when it's just kind of like, well, we just have to educate them, you know. And so I did a whole post on Tanner's page. We had something come in. He was kissing Madeline excitedly at a concert, and someone said something. It was a little bit nasty the way they phrased it and what they were insinuating about him kissing his sister, and that it didn't look normal at their age. And it was like a great chance to make a post and say, hey, let me explain to you why he does things like that. And this is why he shows emotion in such a big way. And you have to understand where he is developmentally. He is not 26 developmentally. And it got so much good feedback. And I think people are like, oh my gosh, I never even thought of that. And it never even occurred to me, that might be how he perceives this situation. So, I mean, even one post like that can do so much good. So those parts about it are kind of exciting, really.
We laugh at we don't laugh. We take a step back and it's not lost on us. Connor's had a few opportunities that have been exciting for us, that he's got to make a little money by supporting something or doing something, which has been great. And so when we do that, obviously there's some talking points or there's some things. And so when we are now in this new world of having to do these things, and his sister is behind the camera helping like direct and do things for him to, make sure the message is provided the right way. If people could see what goes on in our home before the final product, all the shouting, the tears, the meltdown, do I have to say that again? Do I have to, like, if they, and then when he gets, it's this beautiful, cute clip of something. And I think I need to show the outtakes one of these days.
Yeah.
One of the things that I enjoy most about listening to you guys talk, it's not just how unique all of our kids are, but also how unique every single journey in a parent's life is, and the difference and the way that we have struggled so differently and the way that we have parented also so differently. But everybody's journey is so unique. And I think that is one of my favorite things about going through what we are going through, because we do go through it together. It is imperative for all of us to have that support, and knowing that somebody else is going through what we are makes it so much easier and less frightening when you have other mothers like you guys to really shed light on this journey, but also tell your story. And I really appreciate you
My
guys
journey is
telling us
unique to
everything that you
Tanner.
have today.
Lisa's journey is unique to Connor. Yours is unique to your Connor. But just knowing that somebody else went through it, seeing them survive it, seeing them come out on the other side okay, it could give you strength for the next 6 months. You know what I mean? Like, it could keep you propelled for a year. I know there were some books that I read back at the beginning because there were not podcasts. And like, there's several titles that stay in my mind. Those stories kept me going. I'd go back and reread the book. Like, that mom said, I had to do this for 5 years. And then eventually, such and such happened. So it's always so interesting to me, like, it really is a puzzle. I mean, it's a huge spectrum, and none of us really know, because what works for Tanner. It might not work for you, but at least, I went through it and I did it and we made it, and there really were some beautiful parts to the journey, and it does get better. So I hope that helps people.
I know. And I would just say, I think, absolutely. Connor just said this recently, and I thought this is beautiful. So we could, end it on one of Connor's. It's like, the only thing that's set is the past, and that's a chapter that's written and done. But the new page is blank, and you have your pen. So the good news is that none of us know what the future holds.
Right.
But I would argue 20 years ago, Lise was so afraid of the future. I am nothing but excited about the future now. And so if I could give anyone the gift, it is, I lived in real fear 20 years ago about Connor's trajectory and future. And I will say, yes, being on Netflix and having that exposure has taken an unexpected twist for him. But I dare say, it just goes to show you never, ever, if someone had tapped on my shoulder 20 years ago and said, I would have laughed my socks off, because I knew what I was looking at. So just live in hope, and don't be afraid. I think Connor said it. It's like, go forward in strength. It's a good thing to think about. Just go forward in strength, and
in a very profound British accent.
So scary. Sorry, what?
In a very profound, deep British accent.
Yeah, with a British accent, but I won't do him justice. But I just think I'm not afraid anymore. And I wish I could go back and I wish I could tap you on the shoulder, Whitney, and say, don't be scared.
Yeah.
It's gonna, I just see good things happening from here on out.
Yeah, you're amazing. This is amazing that you are at that point in the journey and taking the time to do something like this and helping other parents. I didn't have the bandwidth to help anybody else at the phase you're at. So kudos to you. I mean, it's amazing what you're doing.
And if we can help
Appreciate it.
you, Whitney, let us know.
Yes.
I absolutely appreciate it. One of my last questions was if you could go back and tell your newly diagnosed parent self, what would it be? And I think that was just
That was it. Yeah.
a great summary, because I wrote myself a letter to an old post 4 years ago and said, "Dear newly diagnosed parent, if I could tell you what we would know now and the challenges you would overcome,
Yes.
you know, you'd wipe away so many more tears, you would laugh
Yep.
a little bit more, you'd, you know,
And be so proud of yourself. You're stronger than you think you are, you know.
absolutely."
It's amazing what it will bring out in you.
Yeah, I would just tap her and say, don't be scared.
Yeah.
Don't be scared.
Yeah, we're going to get through it
Yeah. We
one
will.
way or another. So
Pedal your bikes, everybody.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Whitney.
Thank you guys so much for doing this.
Yes,
Thank you for
It was
taking the
so nice
time,
to
and
meet you.
guys too. And thank you for all the work that you're going to continue doing. I am excited to watch that season 3.
Are too.
Yeah,
It's
we're
gonna
gonna
be
roll up our
great.
sleeves. We're gonna do it. All right, you take
Absolutely.
care.
Bye,
Thank
girls.
you guys.
See you later.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you like our podcast, do me a favor and hit the follow and subscribe button. This episode is brought to you by Unpuzzled Parents Connect. We're a nonprofit based out of West Virginia. We connect families and caregivers to the resources, emotional support, and therapies that they need to help their families thrive. If you'd like more information about our mission, you can visit our website, unpuzzledparentsconnect.com, or you can follow us on Facebook.